Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to do an entire album today, going track by track, looking at each one individually and as it works in the larger part of the album. Today we're going to be looking at the 2015 album from Leviathan titled Scar-Sighted. I know it is metal, but that's about as much as I know about it. It is a one-man band, if I remember correctly. We do have an hour's worth of music ahead of us at 10 tracks, averaging out to about 6 minutes per track. Let's dive into this and see what Leviathan has in store for us today. I love the echo. It provides a nice spaciousness to the track right from the start. Interesting vibe here. There's definitely a something a little ominous here, but for the most part there's a sort of reverence throughout. Interesting to just immediately cut everything out except for this bell. I really enjoyed the way everything was mixed in track one, and it's going to take me a second to get used to this. A lot of repeated notes here, just really going for texture and atmosphere. The same idea, but with space now. I can get behind that. so playing around with time signature there. Much dissonance. Interesting, we exchanged the distortion and compression for a reverb, but only temporarily. I think I would have liked to explore that contrast for just a bit longer. I think I finally got a hold on that section, alternating 6 and 7 to beat phrases. I do like the bass here. Alright, I do think that goes into the next track, but I want to talk a little bit about this first. Why? Oh man. Okay, so that's a bit, that's rhetorical. And it's a bit cynical. But we've had Leviathan on the channel before, and I think I've had these same thoughts about them. Well, I guess about his work. I don't remember the dude's name. I guess I'll look that up when I hit the lyrics, but it is a one-man band, if I remember correctly. It is not my cup of tea, though. Y'all knew this with me coming into it, I wasn't going to enjoy this. So I'm going to do my best to keep as much of my subjective thoughts out of this entire analysis here, unless I think they're worth exploring. Because otherwise, I don't think we're going to hit anything that is going to be a true analysis of what is going on, and it's just going to be my thoughts and opinions about it, which are mostly going to be negative. Uh, Dude behind Leviathan, if you're watching this for some odd reason, I got nothing against you. It's just not my kind of music. So, we start off the track with dash, underscore, minus. I don't, it was a line. I think it's a dash. I don't think it's an underscore. I really enjoyed this. It set a really nice precedent and atmosphere for the track, created a blueprint for the sound sphere. It showed us just how large the sound could be, was going to be, kind of. The reverb off of it, the reverence of the chord progression, the slight bit of eeriness, of tension being present that could be a level of fear as well, a type of scary reverence. Mixed in with a little bit of awe. All of this built in with this massive reverb that the chords just resonate out into this massive space. It never really hits a wall, sort of tapers out before we get to the end. To me, as large as this sound is, it's still not big enough to fill whatever room we're in, which speaks volumes about the sound sphere, the size of the room that the audio is taking place in. Metaphorically, of course. I really like this. I like the timbre of the instrument. I like the chords. I like the mixing of sounds going on here. It's a nice atmosphere. It's very moody. It presents a very specific sound. There's some background stuff going on, some hissing or something. I don't know. It really adds to the eerie factor. And then we transition into the smoke of their torment, and we ditch all of that. We do keep some of the harmonic aspects. I don't believe we utilize the same chord progression, but we are utilizing some of those same vibes of reverence and eeriness. There is still a little bit of awe that we can find in the beginning of the track. But we get rid of the, was it an organ, I think, in favor of guitars, bass, drums, and growls. And the growls kick in right at the start. We don't have a typical instrumental opener that we would hear in a lot of metal tracks. The vocals are there from beat one. Really sets the energy, tone, and pace that we would hear throughout the track. The sound sphere itself is just compressed and muddied, and it's so much smaller than what Dash had alluded to. Everything about our intro is sort of put towards the opposite. Any sort of space, spaciousness, vastness that was present is now a claustrophobic tightness. Like I said, harmonically, we still do carry some of it, but the beauty of the sounds of the instrument have been replaced with the gnashing and biting of distorted, compressed guitars, fuzz everywhere, blast beats, and just this, and I say this with all love, this disgusting growl. It is one of the more gnarly or harsh vocals I've heard, I think. There's a, I don't know, like a salival aspect to it. Maybe by the end of the album I'll be able to describe why I find it so gnarly compared to others, but it's not goblin-esque, which also is a very gnarly type of harsh, but it's very far from the clean, uh, mainstream harsh that you would hear in like a metalcore band, right? During their, say, the verse, which is their heavy section. There is certainly a palatable style of harsh that's utilized in a lot of more mainstream metals today, and this just seems, at least to my ears, to sit quite different from that. It isn't trying to sound palatable, it is trying to be a growl. And growls are not they're not clean. They're not palatable. They're not pleasant to listen to. It's not just about providing that sonic contrast, all of the sound waves clashing together. It's adding more to that. There's something sinister to the vocal work. And like I said, maybe as we go further into it, I'll have more to speak about on that part. But the vocals here are just gnarly. And so we are in the exact opposite of our intro instrumental. This took me a second to adapt to. That might have been a really long second. It took me a while, and I'm still not sure that I am adapted to it, but we've heard a lot of music like this, a really tight claustrophobic production with fuzz everywhere. So I think I'm doing better and acclimating quicker than I would have years ago, first being introduced to stuff like this. The music moves through quite a few different ideas. We have more blackened, thrashier concepts, 16th notes on our guitars, blast beats on the drums, screaming from the vocals. We do have a few areas that focus a bit more on riffage, though. Sometimes that riffage is rhythmic, like what I pointed out around the 2 minute mark, where they were just kind of sitting on the same, I think it was the exact same note, and creating a rhythmic idea out of it. The drums and guitars were paired with this, and we did see variations on this idea as well. Instead of holding a note out, we cut the note off at the end, making it a staccato note. You hit the note, you play no more, and it just leaves this space where we were holding the note out. I do appreciate introducing variation into here, and while that was the only place I heard it in this track, I'm sure as I get more accustomed to Leviathan's composition style, hopefully I'll be able to find those callbacks, variations, and possibly even motifs elsewhere in the songs. Um, but there is that layer of fuzz that it's difficult for me to get past at times. There are moments where I find the guitar work to be exceptionally clear. I can hear exactly what it's doing, and other times where it sort of blends together into a muddy blur. So, uh, I guess we'll have variable results with my analysis in that area of recalling past ideas and finding parallels or repeated concepts. Um, we also have more atmospheric sections. We did return to a reverbier. We returned to a section that utilized reverb. It lasted for a couple of bars, and then we left immediately to get back into the fuzzy, distorted guitar work. The ending of the track featured a bit more atmospheric stuff in the vein of our opening track. I would like to hear more of this going forward, a nice balance between the two to really craft the atmosphere of the tracks, which I do think is the purpose. I don't know that I would call all of this black metal. It is certainly black adjacent. There is a heavy emphasis on atmosphere, which to me is the defining element of black metal's composition. Typically, that's mixed with the timbres of electric guitars, the heaviness of metal drum playing, and a mid to lo-fi production. This meets a lot of those, but the atmosphere isn't always king. There are places where melodic riffs and rhythmic riffs take over from purely atmospheric, derived primarily from harmonic ideas that we do see in a majority of this track, but again, not all of it. There seems to be, I would say, a death metal influence in here as well. And I know we've listened to some black death metal before, blackened death metal, which might be where I put this, but the atmosphere is still a primary component. And I don't think we've ever had atmospheric blackened death metal, and that's just a mouthful I don't want to say again anyways. So, um, anyways, I don't know how we got on the topic of genre. This thing is very atmospheric oriented for a majority of it. And there is a balance of the quieter, sparser, reverbier. I'm just going to make that's a word. We're just calling it that. Atmospheric sections and the constant attacks, overwhelming, fuzzy, metallic atmosphere in these two tracks already. It's not a perfect 50-50 balance. It's more like a 70-30, maybe an 80-20. Heavily favoring the metal, but it's still primarily atmospheric regardless. I would like to see more of a fair balance between the two sides, primarily just because subjectively I need a little bit of that contrast in here, both to not keep my mind from wandering, but also to find a little bit of enjoyment, a place to catch my breath and get away from the sonic assault that's going on in many of the metallic sections. With that said, though, the track does end up being exceptionally overwhelming for me. This is one of those rare moments that I think the subjective element is worth digging into. I think the song is supposed to be overwhelming. When I say the song, I'm talking about the Smoke of their Torment, not hyphen. Whatever the first track is called. Oh man. Symbols. Symbols should not be. Well, no, that's not fair. I was going to say they should not be the name of a song, but no, because there's like interesting ways to do that. And maybe this is. Maybe I'm just missing some of the context here on why hyphen is a perfect name for this track, or dash, or minus, or whatever it is. I don't think it's long enough to be an M dash. I'm going to stick with hyphen. Hyphen is its own thing. It's not overwhelming, at least not to me. It's very singular in what it is and what it does. But we're talking about Smoke of the Torment, Smoke of their Torment. This is overwhelming for me. There is a lot going on. It's not just the atmosphere, but also how many notes are helping craft that atmosphere. What is that doing to the atmosphere? It's adding tension, usually for me at least. The sounds of the instruments are aggressive as well. That adds to the atmosphere. It isn't just moody and eerie and dark, but it's also tense and anxious because of how often these metal guitars are playing. The drums are loud and aggressive, and we have those blast beats that come in. They create a wall of sound. When we already have a claustrophobic production, the wall of sound just makes everything feel smaller. Well, it makes me feel smaller because it makes the song feel larger. The wall of sound is even bigger now. All of these elements add into the stress of the atmosphere and make it more than what it is on paper. The production amplifies the intended result of the composition. And it can get a bit much for me. I tend to have two responses to this from what I can remember listening to other music that has made me feel tense and small. One is to check out and kind of approach the music more casually. It's kind of listen to it a bit more on the background level than analyze the plethora, smorgasbord of sounds coming into my ears. It takes a little bit of the stress off. The other is to just dive into it fully and feel it and start sweating and get stressed out. And I have no control over that. My brain decides what it wants to do, and I just have to go along with the ride because Leviathan's the one driving, and all I can do is experience it in whatever way my brain feels is going to keep me the safest, mentally and emotionally, I suppose, in this case. It is not a physical car ride. Though that would be actually pretty cool. Oh, they've done it, haven't they? Yeah, I was gonna say music interviews in cars where like you can play a CD and like a little bit of music, a little bit of talking with somebody, but like this is just comedians in cars or whatever that thing is where it's like are those interviews? I don't know. We're getting way off topic here, but yeah, maybe this would be like a cool idea. We got to fly some comedians. We got to fly some musicians out to Florida. Oh wait, I can just get musicians when they're on tour, right? Huh. Okay, I'm way off topic. Let's get back to this lyrics. So, it's going to be one of those albums. Maybe. I mean, I probably shouldn't judge the whole album based on one song, but the lyrics here are black metal. It's about hating people, killing people, all in the name of Satan, and bringing the world back to Satan's rule away from everything else. It's first wave black metal stuff. It is not for me at all. I think the way it's written is interesting. There's a really nice vocabulary to this. There's no rhyme palette. There's no rhyme scheme. It seems to be in free poetry. There doesn't seem to be a meter to it either. So there's a lot of interesting usage of rhythmic flow. I don't remember necessarily how this was sung or screamed in the track. So I'd have to go back to that to really get a hold of it. But the way that I feel the pulse of it is interesting because it tends to group these really long ideas against a series of shorter ones. And it kind of makes it lopsided in a way that is interesting to read. Regardless, though, the topic is still something that I'm not a fan of. I kind of find it, I don't want to be mean about it. I just don't like it. It doesn't interest me. It's not like I have any sort of physical reaction towards hearing these things. It's just it's common, and I don't have any connection to lyrics like this, and the animosity behind it is something I don't typically like to. That is something that I'm not a big fan of, just on the basis of the idea alone. The Satanism, I don't care, whatever. But it's the animosity, I think, that really bounces off of me. And it's something that is just a part of a lot of black metal, a lot of extreme metal in general. And some of it I've taken a bit too seriously. Cryptopsy's None So Vile album, one, one of the most common comments was, dude, this is supposed to be camp. It's over the top. You're not supposed to take it seriously. And it's kind of difficult to know when to take something seriously and when to not, because all I have are lyrics and the general sound of the vocals. Even with Cryptopsy, the way that they're singing the words still sounds aggressive in a way that lines up with the lyrics, not in a way that subverts them into a type of camp. The over the topness is about someone's own personal line. Where do you draw the line between something that's supposed to be serious and something that is obviously absurd? And unfortunately for me, that line tends to be a lot higher than everyone else's. I still read things quite seriously that others take into the absurd area. And it's, I would think, primarily because I have known people and continue to know people who would say these things in the serious tone that the vocalists have and be 100% serious about them. And it's not absurd to me. It's too real and still serious. And so when we have something like this, I have to ask myself, is this supposed to support the ideas of Satanism? Is this supposed to, Satanism, satanic ritual? Is this supposed to be a parody of it? Is it just over the top for over the top's sake? At the end of the day, I think it's very easy to read these lyrics straightforward, serious, whether it's condoning it or expressly requesting that people do this. I don't think matters. That's going to depend up to the listener, but I don't think there's a way to take this non-seriously. But like at the same time, as always, I will defend an artist's right to make mostly whatever art they want to make. I do think there's a very clear line. This is nowhere near crossing that line. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with the lyrics. I don't know why I went into this whole tirade about this. I guess I just wanted to make my stance clear here. I don't have a problem with these lyrics existing. They just aren't for me at all, in the slightest. I would prefer not to have read them. Not because of the topics of the satanic element, but because of the animosity towards humanity that sits underneath it. The ideas present here about raising the earth and killing everyone in it for a deity. I don't care who that deity is. I don't care if it's for a deity at all. Anyone who, these ideas in a vacuum just do not jive with me. So anyways, touching on the lyrics here, he says, "You shall have all nations in derision, become the catalyst of indignation, march towards the wicked transformations, sliver from mine palate that I might maintain your living ash, so that you may consume them with your fire. You can use poisoned arrows to consume them. They may not be enveloped by them with delicious suffering." He says, "With much agony you will deliver them, the mass crucifixion of the sons of Adam, dispatched by igneous Ophidian, constained abyssal order, announcing the true fruits of the fall. Become the catalyst of indignation and rejoice. With terrible and tyrannical death restore us again." So we're just going to kill all the sons of Adam, all of God's children. And through that, it will be terrible, it will be tyrannical, you're going to inflict a ton of agony, we will provide a mass crucifixion for all of these, and we will rejoice in it. The word rejoice shows up 6 times in this track. Again, there isn't anything, I think, wrong with the lyrics themselves. I don't agree with them in the slightest. I don't like listening to lyrics like this. I'm honestly kind of tempted not to do any more lyrical analyses given how the album started, but we'll see how I stand on that going forward. If nothing else, like I mentioned, I'm not going to judge an entire album based on one track. It's possible this is the worst of the lyrical elements in the track, and maybe the others are about different topics. Still aggressive in nature, but I don't know. We'll figure it out, I suppose. So, yeah. Not my kind of music. Not my kind of lyrics. We're half an hour into this video, and little old Bryan ain't having a good time. But I push forward. There's always something to learn in all sorts of music. And even if I don't enjoy everything that goes on, there may be something that I can apply to my own music, or if nothing else, just learn something I don't like at all. In fact, I don't think we've ever talked about lyrics like these in the depth that we have, in the way that I perceive them and relate to them, I suppose. So, yeah, I just learned something about myself, I guess. Let's dive into the next track, Dawn Vibration. Speaking of more riffier ideas, this is definitely a bit of a death riff, death gallop right here, sitting a bit outside the typical Blackened atmospheric sound we had on our last track. I don't think I mentioned it last song, but I do enjoy the cymbal work on these. Particularly when they decide to use the ride cymbal with rhythmic accents that push against the rigidity. I just realized there's vocals going on right now. Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about meter. To the right. Yeah. Move to a nice 3 right here, but I think we're going to pull back out of it right now. Back to the 4, yep. Oh, but we put the triplets on the ride on top of the 4, so we have the 3 and the 4 simultaneously. Very nice. Oh, I guess the snare hits are also... Yeah, they're also working on that 3 pattern. Okay. Forgot about those moments of dissonance too. All these songs are going to move into one another, aren't they? Yep. Alright. Couple of topics real quick to touch on. First is meter. This song, well, actually both of these songs, Smoke of Their Torment and Dawn Vibrations, feature time signatures other than 4/4, even though 4/4 is the predominant one. Dawn Vibration had the 3, well, I guess technically I call it 6/8. You can feel like they're in groupings of 3 or 6 depending on how you want to go about writing it. I thought what was really cool is we did like 8 bars of that, introduced a 4 once again, and then put triplets over that to include the 3 and the 4 simultaneously. I pointed all of that out. Smoke of Their Torment, though, had a lot of moments with odd phrasings. I don't think there were time signature well, no, there were time signature changes. One section I remember it was like 4/4 and then like 15/16. Maybe it was 13/16. Where we were cutting off 3/16 of the bar. 3/4 of a beat were removed. So we would have the full 4/4 and then a shortened 4/4. There was another section towards the end of Smoke of Their Torment where we were alternating between 4/4 and then 2/4 and then 4/4 and then 3/4 and then 4/4 and then like 7/4 for a really lengthy section. And basically we were just jumping between 4/4 and then something else. And if we just ditch the bottom number, which just tells us what length of note gets the beat, and we just look at the top, you can see that we're basically just changing how many beats are in a bar from 4 to 3 to 4 to 2 to 4 to 6, and it just makes it so that every other bar is shorter or longer than our standard, what we return to consistently. So there is quite a bit of metric modulation going on in both of these tracks so far that kind of push it into more of a progressive territory, especially when you figure black metal and death metal are both two styles of music that tend to focus primarily on 4/4 and very rarely step outside of that. To see such modern prog metal takes on time signature and phrases, it's really interesting to hear that within death metal and black metal. It's kind of both into blackened death metal. We'll stick with that. The old BDM. It's just very cool to see that. It's not something I think I see too often until you get into tech death and post black. We don't really have a proggy black metal subgenre, do we? Everything that kind of does things differently is just avant-garde black metal. It doesn't have its own prog. Man, that's kind of interesting. If it exists, it's not common. I've never heard like prog black metal describing a music. So yeah, there are some really cool metric things going on in here. I got lost in Smoke of the Torment a couple of times based on just all the changing meters going on. It definitely turns it into a bit of a flurry, which I suppose works with the lyrical themes going on there. It's just chaos at times. So this song solidified something about the vocals. I had mentioned that there was a gnarliness about them that I'm not entirely sure what it was. I don't remember this being present in track 2, but certainly here in Dawn Vibrations, the vocals are unintelligible. you just can't make out what's being said. Even when we had that sparse atmospheric section in the middle and the vocals cut through most of the compression put on top of them, and got rid of the screaming for sort of a heightened spoken word that sits right around the voice crack, where your normal speaking voice becomes falsetto, and kind of giving a heavy dose of desperation there. I still couldn't understand what was being said, even though it was a lot closer to spoken word than anything else. All the vocals here are just drenched in fuzz, distortion, compression. I don't even know that I heard syllables, much less words. I basically can only make out that they were vocals because I know there's supposed to be vocals there. Uh, Otherwise, if I had no idea what metal was coming into this, I didn't know what kind of timbres to be listening for, if I had no experience with compressed, harsh vocals like this, I don't know what I would think that was. Maybe some sort of noise machine? Uh, I don't know. The vocals, they're otherworldly, I'd say, here. Uh, They sound very distant from our speech patterns, from our singing patterns, from the way we enunciate, both for singing and speech, and the textures and sonic components to them based on all the effects going on make them sound completely alien, as if not even created with vocal cords at all. Maybe some other way of crafting sound. All in all, definitely gnarly. Again, I kind of remember a bit more clarity in track 2. But maybe we'll see going forward. There's just a lot of vocal deliveries on this album, which will be a nice little bit of variety, I suppose, going forward. And the last thing is Dissonance. I didn't touch on this at all for track 2, but there is a ton of it in here. Not usually utilized in every moment, but as a sort of palate cleanser. We'll get done with a riff or an idea, a strong atmosphere, and then move into exceptional dissonance and stick with that for 16 bars or so. Just nails on a chalkboard. Seems like it takes forever to get out of. It really isn't. They're short sections. And then that'll take us back to something a bit more consonant. Still dark, aggressive, heavy, tense, but not dissonant, not dealing with two notes or a note interval that just is clashing sound waves, nothing harmonious about them. So yeah, just another aspect I don't enjoy listening to in the slightest. I appreciate its artistic purpose here, though. I think it works. It creates a sound of gnashing, like I said, nails on a chalkboard. I legitimately do not want to hear it, and I think that's kind of the point of the music. It is extreme and antagonistic in a way that is supposed to feel overbearing and not enjoyable. The fact that people find enjoyment out of this, I don't think detracts from what they're aiming for, but I think that's where the dissonant kicks in. The dissonant tones kicks in as an extra layer of unpalatability, another hurdle to get over, even if you enjoy blackened death metal to begin with. Um, I mean, just to put it in a single word, both of these songs so far have sounded hellish. For better, I'd say. For worse, for me. I'm not enjoying myself with this album, but it's certainly creating an atmosphere that I think they're aiming for. And so all of the stuff that makes me want to turn the album off is absolutely being quite effective at everything it's doing. And I do kind of find it really interesting, not really enviable, but kind of, that people can listen to this and think, yup, I'm having a fantastic time. When it's over, I'm certainly hitting replay. This is fantastic. I know everyone is different, biases, perspectives, opinions, all sorts of things, right? That's what makes us human. Usually with music, I can at least narrow down. Oh, I can see where people find this enjoyable. Even if I don't, I understand how. And with this, it's really, really pushing my sympathy, empathy. It's pushing my ability to get into other people's shoes. I'm sure that it's the atmosphere, the weight, the animosity of it all. The fuzz is certainly an atmosphere that a lot of black metal enjoyers like. That sort of lo-fi sound to it all, the compression, the claustrophobicness of it. I've heard these words. I know that doesn't feel accurate, but I know this is why people come to it. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't even get it. You tell me you like this, but it feels more like Stockholm Syndrome to me. You've been tricked into thinking you like this. No, that's rude, but that is sort of where my mind goes. Like, some things I can kind of perceive where the enjoyment comes from, and here I just can't. Even after being told why people like this kind of stuff, I'm like, I don't get it in the slightest. Lyrics. This track speaks about the return of the deity. I'm beginning to think maybe this isn't a satanic angle, even though we do have the Christian allusion to the children of Adam in our second track there. This kind of feels closer to a Lovecraftian angle, but we're still talking about some deity worshipping and killing in their name. This one's interesting. It says, his beacon severs vision, again a light from under, crossing out their eyes, all vision ignored, erasing the murmurs, not want and utterance, name and shape still unrevealed. So there is a light that's signaling the return of this thing, this god, this deity, this creature, this beast. And it blinds everyone who sees it. Anyone who speaks is erased. We don't want any utterances. This person, this thing, is still not quite taken hold a form or a shape in this realm yet, but is here. The lyrics are rather short, moving quickly into the end of it. It says, no more can we be found, for belief cannot be seen. It is the frequency of day, commencing with dry stutters. The idea that this group is not completely disconnected. They are, in essence, a cult. Everything they do is in the shape of belief, and everything they are is for this deity. They are nothing else. And it's reinforced at the end. Says, subterrestrial illuminations, we are found. No thing or nothing, it reads as both, but one piece of his whole. These are a bunch of people who have convinced themselves that they are nothing alone, that they are no thing. They're not even worth talking about. Humanity as a whole is nothing. The only purpose they have, the only meaning they have, is in service to whatever they're killing and killing in the name of and resurrecting. I don't know if all of this is necessarily supposed to be read together as a narrative. All the songs so far have connected, and we saw a deity tell everyone to do his bidding, and then we have more of a perspective from somebody in a cult resurrecting a deity. So they are connected in theme, if not narrative at least. It just dawned on me. We're only a quarter way through this. We still have 47 minutes to go. Oh man, someone save me. Let's get pushing forward with Wicked Fields of Calm. No, sorry. Gardens of Coprolite. Okay, I might be able to get behind this. Yeah, really nice layers. We had the wood block. I hope it comes back. Six-beat phrases. I think we're in 6/4. Groupings of 4 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2. It certainly feels like work, labor being done. It's an interesting rhythmic idea. So we have a 6 on the bottom and a 4 in the China symbol. Okay, that's I didn't enjoy the way that sounded, but on paper that was pretty cool. So we have the 6 against 4, the 3 against 2, the hemiola, with the swirling dissonance around it. It's being panned out to one side and then center and then panned out to the other side. I mean, there's a lot of really neat ideas in there. Yeah, hear that ride? Really nice drumming here. A lot of diversity and contrast. Those fills are always fresh. Yeah, plenty of variation there that we really haven't heard in the drums yet. Okay. I'm gonna guess a calm before the storm, but I'm kind of enjoying this. Yeah, very cool timbres for the instruments too. Nice dyads. You know what's funny is I can't tell if they're synths or electric guitars. 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 Oh man, the hammer-on really sold me on that. Another 6 against 4 idea. I wonder if many of these sections are written in 12/8. Getting really close to DSBM vocals here. Pulled back a little bit on the compression, ramped up the reverb, and is doing more of those sitting around where the voice cracks, that desperation style of singing. I do like the bass. I gotta talk about the bass a little bit. It's an interesting decision. A little bit of traditional beauty in the middle of this track. You know what's interesting is it almost feels like it wants to go into a really gazy root harmonically. And then those depressive screams come in, and it sort of cuts through that illusion. Okay. Interesting transition there. Kind of merging the two sides here. And then like a pained yell at the end here. Also, it's totally my luck the first time on this album, and I'm like, okay, I'll run two songs back to back. We decide not to actually put them together like that. Alright, so first of all, the bass. Something I haven't really talked about much on this album, but really needs a little bit of a spotlight. The bass doesn't always have interesting lines going on with it, but it does occasionally, and I think that's worth bringing up, especially for black metal and death metal divorced from the tech death realm. Both of these styles tend to borrow heavily from traditional metal, and metal was never really, well, at one point it was, but a lot of the popular metal acts kind of got rid of the bass sound, and so these styles of music also were a bit light on bass presence in their sounds. And so I think it's really cool to listen to Blackened death metal with bass presence. It fills in the low end. It even hits some moments where it feels a bit sub-bassy. Um, it does a really great job at crafting the foundation, the floor for the song to stand on. But there are some moments where the bass gets to do some really neat things. In fact, that really groovy introduction towards the end of the track there was presented entirely by the bass on the first pass through before we brought in the guitars and the full band and went to that groove metal idea. But when it was first introduced in the atmospheric section, it was a bass riff. And I think that's pretty awesome. The bass has been doing a lot of heavy labor throughout this entire album and also presenting nice little bass lines here and there. It's just really nice to see the bass get a bit of love in these styles of music. Um, Although I suppose it makes sense, the more atmospheric you get, and I suppose the further away from lo-fi you get, including mid-fi, which is where I would put the production here, you need that low-end bass work in order to create those strong, heavy atmospheres. But I do like that, let me get his name real quick. Rest, also known as Jeff Whitehead. We'll stick with Rest. That's his metal name. It's what he wants to be known by, I suppose. He does a fantastic job with these of just making sure that the bass gets to do something, and I really appreciate that. Both of these tracks had moments that worked for me. Gardens of Coprolite had, well, like maybe like a minute and a half in the middle of the track of pure atmosphere. Really finding a nice groove there with the bass, sparseness, layers, bringing in the wood block, layering up the percussion and the rhythmic ideas to get some nice polyrhythmic concepts going on. It was just a beautiful section with some really nice timbres to add to it as well. I mean, wood blocks in metal. Granted, I don't think we've heard the wood blocks in the metallic sections yet, but it's still not an instrument I would expect a metal artist to have in their repertoire, in their palette. Very cool to hear that entire section. I quite enjoyed it. I mean, so far, track 4 is a highlight for me. Not necessarily because of the first half, which is it's like a lot of the music so far, but the second half had some really neat ideas in it. And we did have that groovy section here in the middle that was introduced at least by the bass. Eventually came in with the full band, but also kept jumping back and forth between more atmospheric sections as well. It is becoming more common to have these palate cleanser moments here in the middle of the album, and I am honestly here for it. They typically don't last quite long enough for me, but it's nice to have that little moment to breathe, to get away from everything else. Speaking of everything else, we do have a brand new vocal style, and this makes 3 for 3, I think. Well, we've had 3 vocal styles in 4 songs, so not 3 for 3. Regardless, there's been quite a bit of vocal variety on here, whether it's a production thing like Dawn Vibration going for total drowning out, or a vocal thing, a physical alteration like we heard with Wicked Fields of Calm going for more of that DSBM style of howling, um, going for that, what's the word I want? Run out of option, desperate. The desperate vocal delivery that sits right around the vocal crack. Again, where the chest voice goes into the head voice, or your normal voice goes into your falsetto, sitting right around that, allowing the vocals to crack while also putting distortion on them, and then also uh, physical distortion on them, vocal fried, stuff like that, and then also the digital effects put on top of that. Uh, you know, to me, still, there's some interesting things going on. It's nothing I've really enjoyed aside from those moments of 4 and 5. But the thing is that there are a lot of concepts. I do think that they all work together very well. And there's more variety in here than I was expecting after we finished track 2. It's still very much well within the realm of blackened death metal. It's not like they're veering out into anything that would put them into an avant-garde category. They're not dipping into jazz or bringing hyperpop into it or anything like that. But they are finding quite a bit of ways to create this oppressive, dark atmosphere without just doing blast beats and growls for an hour and 4 minutes. Oh, dang, I remember that perfectly. It's exactly 64 minutes long. And I can respect that. I can appreciate that. The execution on this album is solid, even though it is not something I'm enjoying. The album is half over track wise, but track 1 was a short intro, and we do have a 10-minute epic in the back half, so we're not quite halfway done time wise, but there are only 5 tracks left. Let's hit some lyrics for these last 2 songs, figure out what they're doing, and then we'll push forward. Gardens of Coprolite. So I went and looked that up. Coprolite is fossilized feces. I was going to change that up, but I like the alliteration, so we're sticking with it. Sticking with the more scientific description of it. This one seems to be about putting all of what you are into the actions that you take for the deity. Anything else is worthless, stated quite clearly towards the end. Shunning libellous laws. Therefore, the word, not flesh, is lived. No longer deceiving within your own self. the flesh is not what you need to live. This hunk of meat, this corporeal presence that you take, it's not life. That big monster behind me that we kill in the name of, that we praise, that's life. Everything you need to do should be for it. The word, the belief, as we stated in the last track, Dawn Vibration. What was that line? Oh yeah, no more can we be found, for belief cannot be seen. We no longer take this physical manifestation of ourselves. We are now pure belief in this entity. It says, and so all of us have become like one who is unclean, and all of our righteous acts are like filthy rags. We all shrivel up, and like the wind, our sins sweep us away. Through these acts, this praise we have, the rituals we partake in, our physical selves melt away, and we just become the word, the belief, the faith. And with any luck, as it states at the end, this can manifest in all the hearts of man. Wicked Fields of Calm is about seeing this monstrous thing. His image ever a reminder, iconic respire, thesis ever unaltered, endless veils ever hidden. Now they have lifted the shrine, passing the seed through fire, the visage of the abyss set against you, holy, holy most savage of faiths, his mark, ever igneous tongue of aromatic gospel. Just allowing all of this pain and suffering of simply being in the presence of this thing. All of the destruction that it brings is a reminder that what you've done is worth everything. It's so far a very dogmatic album. Very much sat within, again, I don't know if it's all narratively connected, but it is all in service to the idea of praise and ritual and action for a deity-like creature. Deitic? Is that a word? A deitic creature? Well, I guess we'll stick with deity-like. I don't feel like looking it up right now. And so all of this destruction that you have done, all the wicked things in this field, bring you calm. The wicked fields of calm, as it's called. Because just simply seeing this massive beast is enough to remind you that you've done right. I did take a little bit of a break there. I spent 5 or 10 minutes just sitting down, scrolling through my phone, not listening to anything. I really don't want to listen to anything right now. I just took a little bit of time away from the album, though. It is a bit much for me, and I have found in the past that when I do get overwhelmed, it's better not to push through it, but to take a moment to step back and take a moment to myself away from everything the album's doing. We're going to push forward with Within Thrall, probably push that into A Veil is Lifted, listen to those two combined, then the 10-minute epic, and then our final 2 tracks combined. So 3 more listening sessions, 3 more analysis sections. Let's dive in. Once again, we have the vocal variety here. We have the heavy picked guitar. really nice variety. Even if it is short-lived, it is still something to add to the palette of the album. Is it just me, or is this not doing anything unusual? All the other tracks would sort of bounce between stuff. This is straightforward third wave black metal for the most part. I suppose I spoke too soon. Well, maybe not. I will say, many of these outros, which I classify them as transitions into the next track, they're interesting. They're usually not done with the metallic instruments. They're done production based. Yeah, digging the percussion stuff. Nice fills, nice little ornamental things off to the sides. I just realized this would fit pretty well, that transition in like a mathcore band. What is that sounds? Oh, I chose not to do it that time. So it only happens the first 2 times in this section, because we just heard it 2 more times now that we've revisited this part. I think the best way to listen to this is just trance out. It has some really nice... Do I cut this off early and expect this to be transition? See, these are cool moments. The transitions are slick. It is a transition. I dig the transitions. Some of them we just, allow a guitar with all the distortion and stuff to ring out for a while, allow that distortion to exist, and then we just, fade it, raise the volume up on just the white noise of it, and take us into the next track. I think that's how we went from track 1 to 2, actually. But this one, and I think tracks 5 and 6 also had these elongated atmospheric outros, a full minute almost on each of the tracks dedicated to crafting a production-based transition into the next metallic idea. I find them to be interesting, primarily because they're so far divorced from the primary mode of operations that the album exists in, which is black metal. Lots of loud, heavy, constant noises. And we sort of back that off for these sparse, isolating, introspective segments. I'm not going to say I would listen to any of them on their own. It's still not something I quite enjoy, but I feel like the contrast is special. It adds something to the album that many black metal albums don't have. It also allows the album to have these moments to breathe. An album that's always running at 11 is eventually going to not feel like it's at 11 anymore. And for the album to consistently say, well, let's back it down a little bit. Let's reduce the intensity, the weight, the animosity, the ferocity of the track, and let's just experience this atmosphere. Because, I mentioned at the beginning of the track that there's reverence and awe in our opening track dash hyphen. I didn't know at the time, but I do believe that this album is supposed to be about some sort of beast, creature, not necessarily Satan like I had originally understood it to be in track 2, but maybe primarily a water beast. I've noticed that many of these tracks have their own artwork, at least on Genius. All of them watery. In fact, within Thrall, track 6 has octopus tentacles. I made an allusion earlier to Lovecraftian horror and creatures, and I don't think I'm as far off on that as I think I was when I said it. Regardless, whether it is a traditional deity, something of the Christian nature, or maybe even like a Greco-Roman, or in this case, a cosmic deity, the idea of these powerful beasts coming through and, oh man, the beacon sears the eyes. Severs the eyes? I don't remember what I said. What was the lyric? It was track 3, I think. Regardless, simply seeing them removes your vision. That sort of lines up with the loss of sanity when putting your eyes upon something like Cthulhu. Yeah. And so these moments, I think, both the reverence from the first track and the introspection that we continue to see throughout, sort of these moments of silence, I think line up really well with being in the presence of these gods. Regardless of, again, whether it's a cosmic deity or more of a traditional one, just simply seeing something as powerful and alien as it is, a giant with unspeakable powers. We have tracks that even go into these ideas. Wicked Fields of Calm is about the sheer image introducing a presence of self and acceptance that everything's going to be fine. There is a power to them visually that the music, I think, does a good job of crafting, both the reverence and awe of seeing them and the introspection or the calmness within that a follower is supposed to feel in the presence of them. They both exist outside of the metal aggression, though. And it really makes me wonder what the metal aggression is supposed to represent. Is it simply just because our composer and multi-instrumentalist plays metal, so that was the vehicle for this story? Or is the tension and dread and overbearing weight supposed to represent something as well? I think the easy answer is supposed to be the pressure of recognizing how weak we are, how small we are, how fragile we are against these gods. But the music never speaks of that. The flesh is something to be forgotten, anyways. It's the belief, it's your actions that make up life, not the physical body you are. In fact, you yourself as an individual matters not. After all, we are nothing. Only what we can do for them, only as we are a small part of them. As was noted in track 3, I think that was Dawn Vibration. The only thing I could think of is that the overbearing weight and darkness, doom and gloom that the metal brings is the perspective of those not in the cult, which means these songs jump back and forth rapidly, but again, it doesn't line up with the lyrics. All of the lyrics so far have been through the eyes and perspective of a follower. They've all spoken about calm and resolution and confidence in their action. It's about the positive effects of being in the cult, doing the cult actions, the rituals, and being in the presence of these beasts as a positive. So I don't quite understand. With track 2, sure, it was about raising the earth, murdering, crucifying everyone on it. The music fit that. Everything else, I don't know. I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect there. Uh, where there was an artistic cohesion at one point in this album, and there's thematic cohesion in many of the atmospheric sections, but I just don't see that cohesion with the metal. And that's usually one of those moments that allow me to see past my own tastes and biases and perceive it as art. What was their intention? What is the execution? Does the goal meet what they were trying to do? I do think with track 2, it did. Everything works artistically there. The theme is solid and consistent. I don't see that same level of artistic cohesion throughout the rest of this album. I could be wrong. I could just not be seeing it. I always look for comments with stuff like this where I don't get it. And maybe someone in the comments can explain it better for me. And many times in the past, I've walked away from a song with a better understanding and appreciation of it after having talked to all y'all. But right here, I don't see the through line, and the metal aspects feel at odds with what the lyrics are trying to tell me. But on the flip side, many of the introspective moments have the impact they do because they're not the overbearing weight of everything else. So while they might not have thematic cohesion, they do have musical cohesion. It is the contrast that makes them important, and maybe that's all that's needed. A couple of quick things before we push on. Variation. We're hearing a lot of that here with the intro to track 6, the midpoint of the intro to track 7, the midpoint to track 6, the transitions between these. There's some drum ideas that we haven't heard before. There's some really good drumming in track 7 as a whole. Just a lot of new ideas being presented. It's all still rather heavy in general, but I think I've said this earlier, we finished 7 out of 10 tracks here, and so far every song, for the most part, has its own identity as long as you can see past many of the consistencies throughout the album. I think if you've never listened to music like this before, it's all just going to sound like the same noise from start to finish. But if you have experience with it, you can begin to see the nuances, and each of these tracks do have their own sonic identity to them, and I think that's awesome. We've listened to some albums in the past which the band has a sound, and they've leaned into that sound for an entire album, and, for better or worse. I think that tends to work better on shorter albums. You give me a 64-minute album, and I'm going to want some contrast, some variation to it. And while everything is still in a sound I'm not a huge fan of, I do really appreciate the effort to give each track its own identity. I think that's really important, especially since they all deal with different elements of this cult. I'm going to keep using that word. I don't know what, man, what is this guy's name? Jeff. I forgot his stage name, so I'm just going to have to call him Jeff. I apologize if you don't like that. And if you're watching, I suppose. Not a really great positive. You did a great job review here. I mean, you did do a great job. It's just I'm the wrong audience for it entirely. So don't get disheartened if you are. Pushing forward, lots of variation on this. Track 7 was rather sparse, and I enjoyed that. It really dug into more of that introspective element, and like I said, I enjoy when we get the two sides balanced. And so we did get to explore some different soundscapes here in track 7 that I found to be a bit refreshing. And finally, I was thinking about this. It has nothing really to do with the music, but I'm really glad that this album is as popular as it is. Granted, I'm not looking at Spotify numbers. I don't know how many sold on Bandcamp. I'm not looking at any hard numbers here. I have a very small community. Get like 1 million views a month and like 30,000 subscribers total so far. Very small numbers. And yet, despite that, I have seen multiple from different people requests to check out this very album. Now, some of that is certainly because we've checked out Leviathan in the past, and I think we even checked out a song from this track in the past, although I couldn't tell you specifically what that is. Not off the top of my head. I'm looking it up right now, and I will tell you specifically what it is. Oh, Dawn Vibration was the very first one I checked out from him. May 2022. Yeah, that song I had no recollection of that. And then the whole of Deceit, which is not from this album. We checked that out not too long ago, June, so a few months ago. And that certainly helps. People ask for, especially on Dawn Vibration, hey, I really like this song, you'd enjoy the full album. Although I don't think many people said that, they'd say, I would enjoy a full album review from you. I don't think anyone told me I would enjoy this. for good cause, I believe. But I did see a lot of requests for this album, and it made me think, I'm glad this dude gets to make this music, which it seems he enjoys doing. This is the fourth album, I think. Maybe the sixth album. I don't know. Um, there are at least six albums. I don't know which of those are EPs though, so regardless, this is the sixth album that this person got to make. They seem to be confident in it. They seem to enjoy themselves in some capacity. They would not be making six albums worth of music, I would suppose, if they didn't enjoy making music. And there's a fandom around it. I'm going to assume that in some small part, at least, if not a larger part, this person has been able to make a living somewhat off of their music. That is awesome because there is so little to this music that is traditionally palatable. As far as I'm concerned, this exists way on the fringe of modern music. And I think anytime that you can do what you love and have it be a part of your living. I mean, maybe for all I know, this dude does it full time, and that would be awesome too. That would be even more awesome. But there seems to be enough of a fan base, though, that it is somewhat financially viable. And I don't care how much I dislike this music. It is well done, and this dude gets to make it, enjoy making it, and give it to people who enjoy listening to it. That is just awesome. For something as niche as I kind of view this to be. There's a lot of people who make stuff that is a bit esoteric, difficult to listen to, and end up never really getting an audience. I think that the whole thing surrounding this artist, and specifically this album, which seems to be quite popular, at least in the circles that surround me, I just think that's awesome. And I'm glad it happened. I'm glad that this dude gets to keep making music if he wants to. Presumably, again, I don't have any insight into the finances from this project and stuff like that. I don't know. Just completely guessing based off of the reception and the requests for it. I'm going to take a second to look at some lyrics. I'm kind of surprised we're still looking at lyrics, but after track 2, things lightened up a little bit, so I'm thankful for that. Let's hit this one. Within Thrall. Within Thrall is, I don't know. It's short. I can read this whole thing to you in about 10 seconds. But it starts with a line that says, "The death of the gloaming." Now, gloaming is the time of day at night, at twilight, dusk. It's nighttime in general. It says, "The death of the night. Ever your derision within a cocoon of falsity. Again, turn mine place where knives lay, turn it toward your laments. All-encompassing compromise." I like that line. Not necessarily what it means, but just the way it's encompassing compromise. That's just a very cool phrase. Leech of leper lives, or lives. Yeah, I think it's lives. Leech of leper lives. The gloaming is buried, turn it toward your laments, mine place where knives lay. Long repudiated tears. Oh, I think I got it. He says, those of you who are living in falsehood, where maybe you find sorrows with the current state of affairs. Maybe you're not a big fan of the constant daytime, which I don't think is necessarily literal. I think it is an era of truth. The enlightening is what they're going for there. It says, you can't bear this truth, and so you're sorrowful about it, right? You have laments, these long repudiated tears of yours. That sorrow that you have, come to where I am. Look at the knives I own and point them towards your laments. Kill the emotions and recognize the truth and go alongside it. I kind of read that in two ways: either join us or die. Either way, you're killing something. You're either killing your ties to the old world and accepting the new one, or you're just ending your physical existence here. That's what that song is about. A veil is lifted seems to be about a ritual of sorts to end the old gods. There is a flaming serpent of orbs that is spoken about many times. It is 500 years tall, unremoved of spirit. Though that description of it is stated 3 times at least, it requests fall onto the hands of this angel. I'm not necessarily sure what that's supposed to mean. I kind of take angel as an opposition to the cult's description of themselves, but that might have also been informed by my original satanic perception of this cult. Maybe they do view themselves as the angels. I don't know. Later on, says Dea Desertionum. Dea Desertionum. It is Latin for desertion of God, to desert, your God. Don't believe in him anymore. Roaming salacious and insatiable, not destroyed by the glorious, permitting the most obscene tantra, venenum deus, how you knew the dusk ever, divine courtesan. The idea that this serpent is going to roam everywhere, completely insatiable, created by flaming orbs, right? So just burning everything in the wake, not destroyed by anything, and permitting the most obscene tantra. It says venenum deus, which means the god of poison, or possibly a venomous god, asking how you knew the dusk, which, as we just mentioned, we're killing the dusk. It's over. We're done with that. We're going to end the gloaming. So this just seems to be about one of the gods that were brought down by the ritual. And this is a ritual asking them or commanding them to continue on with their destruction. And for everybody else, once again, wake up. This is how things are. Desert your gods and join our cult, because obviously our gods are real. That kind of vibe. Alright, 3 tracks to go. Over 20 minutes still left. In fact, 25 minutes still left. Jeez, this is almost half the album in these last 3 songs. 26 minutes. 26 minutes out of our 64. Yeah. That's still a lot of music to go. We'll check out Scar-Sided right now, which is a 10-minute epic. It's the longest one on the track. Discuss it a little bit and then move into our final 2. Let's kick it. And see, this kind of puts all the chanting into perspective too. I forget which songs have it and which songs don't, but being that a lot of this feels ritualistic, it's commands to bring about gods or asking for them to do our bidding and stuff like that. The chanting certainly adds to that. This might be one of the darkest atmospheres we've had yet. This may be the doomiest also, as the tempo, the pace, the direction, the momentum, it is just dragging. It is heavy, it is weighty in a way none of the other songs really have been. We have screams of anguish and pain. Presumably these are people outside the cult, but maybe not. And this is only the second time we've had these really low fry crackle vocals. Again, it just adds more weight to this, which is already a fairly weighty section. Really embracing the doom signs here. You know, it just dawned on me too, the band's called Leviathan. That could be the beast. Some timing discrepancies going on. Pretty typical for slower time signature, slower tempos like this, especially in doom metal. But what's interesting here is that it's one person who did it, which means everything was recorded piecemeal, and he purposefully left the discrepancies in. It's not like the whole band was playing and someone was just a bit sloppy, so like, whatever, we'll leave it.
And he still has hell to look forward to.
Fun ride cymbal stuff again. Another song that I can't really make out any words, so it just sounds like wailing. Pained wailing. I do like the two guitar timbres here. Our left one is thinner and our right one is bulkier. They work well together. Well, that was a song. Now throwing in the polyrhythms on the ride. You can still hear the ride cymbal. Just a really gorgeous idea. Alright. So I initially called this the 10-minute epic of the album. That's because I didn't know it was going to go full on Doom. Honestly, we just listened to a standard Doom song. The joke being that if we had sped it up to a normal tempo, it would have been like 3 minutes of music and then 2 minutes of the black metal stuff at the end, 5 minutes sitting alongside everything else. But no, that's just a joke at doom metal's expense, I suppose. The tempo was important though. It creates this heavy weight and dread that none of the other tracks really have, and it comes entirely from the tempo. When the song can barely move, it feels monstrous. I don't know what in particular this track is talking about, but once again, we have a song with a unique sonic identity to it. Scar-Sighted is definitely the most unique out of all of these. I think if you were to give me any moment of the first 7.5 minutes, 7.5 minutes of this track, I'd immediately say, oh, that one's Scar-Sighted. Everything else has things that sound similar between them. Scar-Sighted's main attribute is the slower tempo, slower than anything else on the album. And so that contrast coming in so late, we're so used to either being ambient and no rhythm or driving black metal stuff. And for this to have rhythm, to have drums that play ever so slowly, it meets the atmosphere with the metal and gives us something in the middle of that while also focusing on the absolute sheer monstrosity of whatever the song is about. It is so large and unwieldy that we can only move so quickly through the topic. It makes every hit feel heavy. Now, unfortunately, the other side to that is what I typically don't click with too much with doom metal is it's slow. Slow with not a lot going on, especially here where we sort of get a snare accent on every other beat, which is already pretty distant, and some howling and then some ambience, just held out notes going along through this. There isn't a lot of movement or ideas happening, and so after a couple minutes, I kind of got it. It's really more of a feeling thing that doom metal is. And so this is not really a song that does well with scrutiny, with analysis, with active listening. It's really easy to get all the information you need while active listening early on, and then it's really best to turn that off and go back to a casual type of listening and just feel it all out. And I didn't realize that until it was a bit too late, so I did find myself getting a bit bored on this one, but that's a me thing. I'm not putting the weight on the song or the composer. That was definitely my mistake, and not one that I think most people would make. I think the song works phenomenally where it stands in the album. It does a fantastic job of creating contrast and changing up the pacing of the album, giving us, like I mentioned earlier, the weight of the metallic side with the slow introspection of the more atmospheric components of the album so far. So everything definitely worked there, except once again, man, the vocals. I get I get the intended auditory element of the wailing, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be met with such gnarly production that you can't understand it. And maybe it is. I mean, it does provide a specific element, doesn't it? Many of these songs don't feel like they have a vocalist. It feels like they have a bystander. Think about that for a second. It just dawned on me, and I thought in my brain, that's pretty clever, Bryan. You got to tell them about that. But honestly, think about it. There's a couple of tracks in here, track 2 specifically, where I think the vocals are a bit on the clearer side. Within Thrall also had a couple moments of this where the vocals were clearer. Again, they're still not super clear, but I can at least make out that they're vocals. These moments feel more, for lack of a better word, preachy. They're telling us stuff. Some of the other songs are just completely drowned out. They feel like it's somebody who happens to be in the scene screaming in pain and torture as, I mean, this whole thing is about bringing these cosmic deities into our world and having them wreak havoc everywhere, killing in their name as well. It's there's a lot of pain and suffering going on, and that's kind of what it sounds like a majority of the time is we have this music, this soundtrack to the event, and we just can't shut up Carl in the other room who's getting 50,000 lashings. And so his screams are reverberating through the halls and getting picked up by the microphone that's, I don't know, recording the drums or something. I don't know. And I think that's a really interesting perspective to go on this. It does have a bit more artistic merit to it, especially since many of these songs are about just people in the cult. It also brings it up the concept of vocal variety. Why do all of these songs have a different approach to it, whether it's a production or technique thing? Many of the songs feel different vocally. What if we weren't seeing it from the perspective of one person? Maybe at the beginning, the leader of the cult was telling us about, what was to come and what we need to do in order to bring the Leviathan to our realm, but every other track could just be random people in the cult. I don't think there's anything about any of them that really scream main character. Because the main character, of course, is the Leviathan. It is the beast that they've summoned. I think I am coming around to this album. Not that I'm ever going to listen to it again. It's definitely not my cup of tea. I don't think it ever will be. I don't think I'm going to develop an acquired taste for this. But I was very much defeated after our second track and apprehensive to move forward. If it wasn't for the fact that it's kind of my job to do this, I don't know I would have continued. In fact, I have a list of abandoned albums where maybe I get a few songs in. It's not for me. Halfway through, sometimes even. This would definitely be in there. 3 tracks in, I would have been done. And I'm glad I've been forced to push forward. I think there are some cool ideas in here, sections in isolation that I enjoyed. And overall, I think there is a really cool artistic element to this. It's not something I'm going to listen to again, but I am glad I've heard it once. At least I'm saying this before listening to our final 2 tracks. I suppose my opinion could change in the next 15 minutes of music. But it is developing into something that I don't know where to take this. I was gonna say, that supports its existence, but I hate going to that. I think art's existence should be supported by the fact it exists. It doesn't need to justify it, but my brain likes to go in that direction. I gotta investigate why. But I think it is coming around to justifying its inclusion on the channel, possibly. Yeah, I still feel kind of dirty saying that too. But I don't want to say I'm enjoying it. I think that is wrong, but I'm coming around to it. Even I think that's a bit strong. Let's oh wait, no, we got to do lyrics. Jeez, I am getting ahead of myself. There's a part of me that's like, I'm done. I'm ready for this album to be over, and I don't know if that's quite apparent yet. All right, let's hit some lyrics for Scar-Sided. So this is interesting. All of the conviction throughout the album lyrically seems to be missed here. States amidst these worn hearts, increase pressure. Oh, the diamond of misery, jewel of such oblivion. So there are people who are kind of getting beaten down. Maybe things aren't looking so great. We increase their misery though. Obviously, if we increase the pressure of their misery, we will churn out a diamond. It is the jewel of oblivion, after all. But I sit here, pacing again, still no reply, for where purpose wilted, loss and regret bloomed, life after life, learning nothing. This person has questions. They sat devoted, attending all their deeds, bringing about the Leviathan, and they don't find purpose in doing this anymore, but they are finding regret and loss. Many lives lost, some probably close to them. They're asking for a reply, though, possibly to the Leviathan. What have I done wrong? Where have I gone wrong in my devotion? Please let me know what all this is for. The conviction is weakening. Says later that there's only tattered accusations paling to the comparison now utterly drained, and all wonder is banished. Life after life, absorbing nothing. Nothing got answered. Doesn't seem like they know what to do next. For us, we have to go into the next track. We need to see where this goes. We're going to push forward with all tongues toward, leading us into Aphonos. Let's get into it. All tongues toward, having a march, makes sense. Unification of rhythm, direction. Tons of tension. Yeah, this is a really nice... I know it's going to lead to some black metal thrashy stuff, but I'm digging it right now.
The body is not one member, but many. Now, are they many? But of one body.
So the march is actually crafted by a snare and something else. There was at least 3-4 drumsticks being utilized there at once. Just back to the overwhelming chaos. Almost sounds like a bit of positivity amongst the darkness. We had a little bit of that in the middle of the track somewhere, I don't remember where it was, but for the most part, dark and weighty has been the standard sound. Not so much for that positivity we just heard. I'm curious if the final 10 minutes of this album are going to push more in that direction. It's almost like we've lost the low end here. It feels sparse and empty. Or smaller, at least. It's still a big sound. The guitars feel a bit lost. It's a weird little moment here to come off of our last section. A little bit of that positivity there. Oh, what a way to wrap this up. Yeah, that ended with a ton of tension and just grittiness that we hadn't heard yet. Okay. Just wasn't expecting that, that's all. Back to the Doom. A little bit of the March thrown in there from Altung's Tor too. Yeah, I mean, this seems about right. I don't know what the lyrics are, but once you've brought that kind of beast into this world, there's no going back. It's just pain and suffering, and that's where this is at musically. The ultimate destruction. Oh, it's just, I figured we were going to go down that route. It's just the one note. The ultimate destruction is just completely blowing out the sounds. I'm sure I'm sure parts of this album, particularly even this ending, it probably makes sense if you understand everything, and it probably has some real big emotional weight to it. Not just this ending, but this entire track as an album closer. But I'm so far disconnected from what this album's doing. So, track 9 continued on with more of the traditional black metal stuff. Lots of blast beats, lots of sounds, lots of wailing. Track 10 gave us a little bit of both, but a heavy dose of doom there at the end, really taking its time to wrap the song up. Like I was kind of talking about there, I'm sure these two tracks probably have a ton of weight, narratively, emotionally. If you're paying attention to it all, if you're engaging with it on a more casual level and really feeling the album out, these are probably some big moments. I I was just kind of done with it. Again, no shade thrown towards Leviathan. It just it is so far away from what I enjoy listening to. A 10-minute track, a 15-minute track, okay, whatever. I can stay engaged for that, but 60 minutes of this is a lot for me. Even with the break in the middle, I probably could have dealt with another one just after Scar sided, I think, to head into the end of this. I think it's interesting, and it makes me, I was going to say it makes me want to go back. Uh, I don't really want to listen to this again, but I am kind of intrigued, and maybe those who have spent a lot of time with it can answer some of this for me. I mentioned that there was a bit of a mathy metric stuff going on in our first two tracks. Usage of tailing ideas, um, pickup bars, and metric modulation on the meter side of things. Smoke of Their Torment had a ton of sections where the time signature was changing every bar. I don't think this really came up at all after track 3. If it did, I completely missed it, which it's possible. I'll be honest. The longer the album went on, as I just mentioned, I kind of I engaged with it a little less each song. I got a little bit of a pick me up after that break. I think 6 and 7, I got a bit more into the depth of it. But again, I feel like there's a lot of 4/4 on this. It makes me wonder what specific about the first two tracks there that warranted the extra metric complexity. If anything warranted it. Maybe it was just how the composition went. I know most albums aren't written first song to last song, but I mean, maybe just had a lot of metric ideas for those two tracks and didn't for the rest. I don't know. Maybe there's a reason for it narratively that I didn't pick up. But, as that track was wrapping up, I'm looking over at my notes. Is there anything that I need to tie back into all of this? And I looked at meter and I was like, dang, that hasn't really been a relevant topic in a while. Yeah. I mean, everything else I wrote down, there's bass. Yeah, even towards the end, the bass guitar is still present. Atmosphere. I don't know why I wrote that down. I wasn't going to forget it. It's a black metal album through and through. Atmosphere is the bread and butter of it. Dissonance. Yeah, All Tongues Toward had some bonkers dissonance there at the end. What a wild way to end that track. And then, of course, the unusual panning of the wailing at the beginning of track 10 that kind of startled me a little bit. Wasn't expecting that. It's very uh, present. It felt nearby. Variation still continuing on till the end. Tracks 9 and 10, despite being more black metal and more doom metal, are both rather unique in the album. They're both doing their own things, and give me a bit of time with either one of them, and I can point out that they're these tracks and not another one. So, I mean, all in all, I do have a lot of praise, I think, for this album, and I did try my best to avoid the subjective negative comments unless I felt they were worthwhile. usually, if nothing else, just to provide a little bit of context. But there was that moment, I think it was track 5, the analysis for that, where I mentioned that, the album doesn't make me feel great. It's heavy, it's weighty, I feel uncomfortable listening to it. It creates these very hellish soundscapes. I mean, it is just not a fun experience. And I think that my non enjoyment of it was partial to my read of this album. It isn't just that I don't enjoy it, it's that I think the non enjoyment is a core element of it. There's a lot of sections in here that feel like the gnashing of the teeth, fingernails on chalkboards, plates on silverware. No, forks on plates, scraping. Yeah, I just did not enjoy my time, but the whole album is also about vast discomfort. Pain is the mode that all truth comes from. Everyone will find purpose through their misery, as stated in, what was that, a veil is lifted? Maybe that was within Thrall. Um, oh no, that was Scar-Sighted, wasn't it? The song about uh, a quivering of faith, weakening of faith. Um, so yeah, I mean, this album did what I think it planned to execute. It had an idea of what it was in mind, and they masterfully brought that into reality. Regardless of whether I enjoyed it or not, I do think this is a remarkable album. It does some stuff very, very well. Stuff that I don't like listening to, but it crafts a story and an atmosphere and a lore that brings it all into a very cohesive experience, emotionally and literarily, the literature of it, the story of it, alongside the emotion of the music. There's also a lot of skill to put all of this together. I'm not so sure about the performance side. Vocally, there's a ton of skill in there. The drums and guitar and bass work, I didn't really hear anything that was virtuosic. Virtuosic? That would have required a lot of skill to pull off. There were certainly some trickier segments, but for the most part, it was a bit of an easier thing. I'm not a skilled guitarist, and I think I could play most of this, which I'm probably overestimating it even then. It's probably more difficult than I assume, but it sounded a bit on the easier side. Um, but the production, I think, requires a ton of skill. And that's not even. You can also look at the composition too. It's not really that important if it's difficult to play, but to bring all of this together, to envision it and then create it on both the composition and production side. Uh, this song doesn't need to be musicianly technical. My brain is so busted today. You don't have to have a ton of musicianship to create something awesome, epic, impactful. And the fact that it is technically on the simpler side doesn't diminish the composition or production in it, and it doesn't really diminish the musicianship and performance side either. It's simply a statement of fact that I was bringing up, um, that there's a lot of skill in here, even if you don't perceive it. This took a lot of work to put together, especially since it seems like it's not just a one man project where they make the music and record it. It also seems like they're the producer as well, and that is an entirely other skill set that is, it takes a lot of skill. And to create something as unified as this while still giving every song its own identity sonically and compositionally. Yeah, it's just, there's a lot of great stuff going on here. We'll hit the lyrics for these last two, and I don't know. I think I might go watch something a bit brighter and optimistic. Elemental's on Disney Plus now, right? Maybe I should finally watch that. Oh man. All Tongues Toward appears to be about the final ritual in order to complete whatever. There's here's something really interesting. A lot of these lyrics have a repeated phrase. I think every song has one at least. This one is tracing the circle. We have tracing the circle, serpent's diamond, tracing the circle, serpent's locution, tracing the circle, serpent's thunderbolt. We repeat that one again later on. Most of the songs do this. It is usually at the start or in the middle of a stanza. And when I say in the middle, I mean literally like line 3 out of 4. Not just like somewhere in between the start and end, like literally the middle. There's always some sort of symmetry or pattern to it. One of the tracks, it was like every other line for a while, really creating these mantra elements in the lyrics that I can't believe I haven't brought up yet. It's such a core element to the creation process of the lyrics. I don't really hear it too much in the music. I mean, I can't hear the lyrics much at all in the music. But it is certainly a part of the lyrics. There's always something here that creates cycle, that creates familiarity, that creates the mantra, creates that comfort, that home you're always getting back to. So, anyways, we trace this circle, all the things that it can represent, or all the things it's tied to. It says, us, the acolytes of filth, rinsed in vice, in glorious knavery, made as the filth of the world, in much fear and trembling, head shorn in prophecy, baptized in opaqueness, slattern despot. Within such turpitude, tracing the circle, serpent's thunderbolt, mask of lilitude, readies the blade of Cain, down diamond flights, but a single clutch of ashes, all tongues toward the void, olding and encircling time, a Saturn beyond mortal perception within her briar fortress. Us, the people who have done so many terrible things in our life prior, in our life now, aiding you in this. We have lived our lives in filth, but we are rinsed of that. We are completely baptized in opaqueness, the ability to not be seen through. We are head shorn in prophecy. We are 100% in this for you. Our flesh is meaningless. The word is life. We trace the circle with the mask of lilitude and ready the blade of Cain. In olding and encircling time, the cyclicalness of this, a Saturn beyond mortal perception. Whatever this ritual is, it is beyond us. It goes across time in ways that we cannot fathom. That's the end of that one. Moving to Aphonos, it almost seems like we've shifted perspective to one of the gods. If not, this is quite a powerful leader within the cult. He says, this origin of ritual brings you upon your knees and singing. Hanged by your own tightening the sword, this veil of mad spirits tethered in royally belief, and I can smell your fear again, paralyzed by doubt, writhing ever within your own consciousness, trapped in division and barren, upon your knees, singing, but still on your knees. I think this calls back a little bit to Scar-Sighted about sort of having a little bit of a shaking of the belief, paralyzed by doubt, the fear cropping up again. What have I done? My devotion replaced by loss. And he says, but within this, could also just be speaking to the general population who are somehow still alive but not part of the cult, or anybody who has turned originally part of the cult but have tried to find something else, shocked at what they've brought forth. He says that you're trapped in your own consciousness, going back to the idea of being stuck within the flesh. If you want to live, you must move beyond the earthly body you inhabit. It says, but you're trapped there in your own division, barren, can't produce anything. You're singing, sure, but still on your knees. I don't know. The narrative never really got wrapped up here. Maybe it was never a narrative to begin with. There's a lot of elements that line up here. We have rituals for elder gods, we have the destruction in their name, we have them being present, and the feelings that they can put and instill in the people who see them. There's a lot of death, there's a lot of destruction. There's a serpent that came down and burned a bunch of stuff in their wake. And there was one song about maybe we didn't do the right thing. But then after that, it seems to just keep pushing forward, and it doesn't really feel final to me, unless, of course, this final track is from the perspective of one of the elder gods, presumably an elder god named Aphonos, looking down at these humans, these mere mortals, some of them quaking in fear, seeing what they've brought. I don't know. I do know I'm ready to wash my hands of this. Those are my thoughts on Scars Sighted from Leviathan. Sorry we didn't wrap this up super nicely. Sometimes we get to the end of an album and I'm like, the outro explains everything. We put all of it together and wrap it up with a nice bow. And no, I don't get the ending to this. I'll just be frank about it. Or I guess I can be Bryan about it. I didn't get the ending. And the music sort of just doing that lengthy fade out with the spoken word over it, which I noticed the spoken word didn't show up in the lyrics. I don't know what was being said there either. Something about the fear in your eyes or something. Yeah, I don't. I'm missing something, obviously, but I think that's all the brain power I can put towards this one. What are your thoughts on this album? Did anything stand out to you? Was there anything you enjoyed, didn't enjoy, things you'd like to expand on what I said, correct me on, just give me some information that I didn't talk about at all? Put all that stuff down in the comments. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you to here. You can find my music, which is not like this at all. You can find ways to the Discord server and chat with the rest of the community. You can find ways to support the channel. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think that translates to 4 p.m. UTC now. We had a time zone shift, getting out of daylight saving time over here, and that changed my relationship to UTC, of course. So that might affect you, it might not. Double check your times and make sure you can show up to the stream on time. Again, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's certain. I'm pretty sure that that's 4 o'clock UTC though. 4 o'clock p.m. Otherwise, I'll be back Monday. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of studio versus live. All right, until next time, remember to be. Wait. No, we're going to kick off studio versus live. Oh my jeez. I really this album, man, turned my brain into mush. That's probably a good thing. People are like, "Yeah, his brain became mush. That's what this album can do." I'm like, "Please don't make me do it again." Uh we're going to kick off next week's theme, which is studio versus live. It's a 2-week theme. We're going to check out 6 songs, which is a little different. Usually our themes are 5. We're going to be exploring the studio and live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. One day dedicated to each version of the song. And then Tuesday and Thursday are going to be purely special selections. You can always check the schedule, which you can find in the Linktree link I posted earlier. If you ever want to see what's coming up, I always have that up to date. You can see what is coming ahead of us, usually about a week or 2 weeks ahead, depending on how far ahead I have things set up. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening. And please don't go summoning cosmic celestial gods. It never ends well. I don't know. I'll catch y'all later.